When? Welcome to Brightly You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Tracy.
It's been a little while since we've done that. Not for everybody listening. Thankfully, we're still weekly, but we took a little break.
Right. We did take a little break. We actually had a fun break, too.
We went to a magical cabin and did lots of stuff that you'll hear about later. But there was a moment where you were talking about something, and I imagine it looked like I zoned out. And then a little bit later, I owned up to it. And I said, I just got to say, I've been having like a major deja vu moment today. And you said, I saw. And then just now, when we were kind of reviewing what we want to talk about today or the outline, it happened again.
It did. Well, it was deeper than deja vu. Yeah. It was a connection. Like during the day, we were separated. We hadn't talked during today. Something happened to me and something happened to you at the very same. I think it was at the same time.
So I think it was at I wasn't working on the podcast at the time. I don't think I was actively or even subconsciously thinking about it.
Yeah. I said to Tracy, I did a Tracy because I realized I had a book that I could have used for this show. And then I was going to say the name of it. And Tracy said, wait, The Alchemist? And I said, yes. And she said, and go ahead.
I said, I had a moment on the couch today where all of a sudden The Alchemist, the book popped into my head and how, hey, that might correlate with the show later. And I was like, cool. It's like 10 a.m. It's a little too late for that. We recorded in like 6 hours.
Yeah. But still,
I don't know where that like light, because it felt like a lightning bolt and some imagery in the name. And I feel like we were very synchronistic.
Yes. And I had the same thing. It was this imagery. And I was like, I know where that is. And I ran down the stairs, boom, there it was on my shelf. But also it was like, why today? Why not 3 weeks ago? So we're very much in tune and we very much have intuition. And I think we're connected, but it's like, it's just got to get a little bit faster.
Well, I wonder though, if this conversation might lead to some sort of aha moment or epiphany moment. Most likely for you, it happens for you the most in the moment. I'm a bit more stubborn with that, where we decide, oh crap, we really do need to reread this, and doing it as a reflection or as a result to the conversation versus preparing for it, maybe we'll get something different or more helpful or beneficial out of it. Yeah,
I love that. And also maybe that could be like we could do that on the podcast after we read it. Or did you mean that? Otherwise,
sure. Book club. So The Alchemist is a book by is it Paulo Coelho? Is that how you say his name?
I think so. Yes.
Apologies if I got those vowels wrong there. And as we both just shared, that wasn't at all the intention of today's podcast, other than Amy's really wanted to talk about alchemy for a while. And outside of like, a medieval scientist, I didn't really think of alchemy as something people do. But now that I'm on like Witch Talk on TikTok and like we've been delving more into more holistic modes and mediums, whether you want to call it witchcraft or kitchen witchery, or just like I like to garden and use things as they're intended.
Yes, exactly. Like, you don't have to call it witchcraft. You could just say I like to garden and cook.
But so what is alchemy, both to you and to maybe Merriam-Webster? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like at the easiest level, alchemy is turning one thing into something better. Merriam-Webster says it is a power or process that changes or transforms something in a mysterious or impressive way.
These are fun words.
I know, aren't they? So today, another thing that happened to me just today is I realized first of all, I overthought this show way, way hard. Just
Well, because it means
overthought
a
it.
lot to you.
It does.
But it's
And
also it's happening in real time for you, I feel like.
oh, maybe that's why. But also I think that it means so much for me and I feel so big stuff around it that I couldn't put it in a container. But today I was like, Amy, you have loved a specific alchemist since you were a little girl. And that alchemist is the fairy godmother from Cinderella.
Oh my God. Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
Right?
That's wow. Yeah, no, fairy godmothers are she was totally an alchemist. She took a pumpkin and made a carriage. And I don't know about arguing which one is better, but it certainly was mysterious and impressive.
Yes. Yes. And so maybe not better, but maybe for your best use. I don't know, something like that. Like,
or just something more.
Yeah, something more. It's definitely something more. So then the minute I thought that, I was like, well, first of all, the Merriam-Webster thing, the impressive, like, I love mysterious and impressive, right? And I don't think you have to be like a scientist or anything to appreciate that.
But how many, I mean, I would be hard pressed to find somebody that's not drawn to the mysterious in some way, so maybe you're not into like murder mystery or mystery, but the mysterious is quite like, not endearing, but like it calls you in, right? Like it's definitely, it calls you in, it gets your attention.
To the point where it's almost like you don't want to know how.
You don't want to ruin it.
No, you don't. You don't want to know the how in a way. But then the other thing I was thinking of, like, once I thought of like, oh, fairy godmother, she's an alchemist. Then all of a sudden I was like, hold on. Like when you cook, you are an alchemist. You take flour and egg and milk and maybe baking soda and poof,
and magic herbs from your garden. And like, well, maybe not for pancakes, but
no. Artists are alchemists. They take one thing in one form and create something else. And then I had to, of course, think about like makeovers, like house makeovers. HGTV is like has multiple series on alchemy. So,
well, and I mean, like even authors, like you could give 5 different authors the same sentence, and depending on where they put the punctuation and commas and things like that, you could get a much different story from a single line.
Oh, I love that. I thought you were going to go with like a whole book, but
that too,
just with a sentence,
just with words.
Love that.
Yeah. Just with rearranging words that we all say all the time. We get this beautiful, eloquent, fun, adventurous, any type of story to totally engross ourselves in. But even still then, the readers transform that into something in their minds and the picture in it and how they experience it.
And each reader transforms it into something just a little bit different. And so I think our goal is not to take the mystery away. Like there is still mystery. Like there's mystery to me of how artists still do what they do, how they can do that. But what I do want to like just concentrate on is that it's not out of our reach and we can still feel the mystery of it and yet know that we're just like, there's so many people or we all can be everyday.
So is your fear that by pointing out that we're doing alchemy all the time going to take away the mysteriousness of it at the bigger moments?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's a fear or if it's just, I want it pointed out that it doesn't have to take the mystery away.
I also feel like you can be intentional with it and there can still be the je ne sais quoi about it, right? That whole, the sum is greater than the whole of its parts kind of piece to life.
Yes.
That even though, so I bake cookies and I was baking them for myself, 2 neighbors that are roommates to one side of me, and then my dearly departed neighbor on the other side of me. People are, one passed, one moved, the other's getting ready to move. And when I said something the other day, you're like, well, you're a baker. And I was like, no, I'm not. I don't have anybody to bake for. And those guys, the people I bake for are constantly telling me like, I don't have to make so much. And I'm like, no, but I don't know how to have an egg. And they're like, well, but you could make these type of recipes instead. Or what about the recipes that have 2 eggs and you can just have all the ingredients? And I was like, I don't like taking my favorite recipe and paring it down because I feel like you're at risk for whatever that magic of the ingredients you had before. And same with doubling a recipe. It's not the same for me. I'll make it twice. I won't
I
stick everything in a
agree.
bowl. I'm sure bakers out there are just rolling their eyes at me, but for a
No,
home cook,
my mom, when we were growing up, baked, I think it was seven loaves of bread every week because she couldn't have half the recipe. It just wasn't right. It didn't work out right. Now, believe me, we could go through quite a few loaves a week, but not seven. So every week she'd kind of do what you did. She would bake 7 loaves and then a few of them would be given to the neighbors. But I agree with you. And I don't think I'd ever thought of it in those terms. Like you lose some of that magic when you try to shortcut it or half it.
And I feel
whatever.
like, I mean, there are so many people out there that are like brand name is no different than store bought. I can taste a difference. For the most part, there are instances where like Trader Joe's is just slapping their label on the same thing and calling it something different. But you absolutely can taste the difference between things, and what you love is what you love. Whatever one you had first is typically the one that you're gonna have that relationship with. And at its base, the ingredients are the same, but they're slightly different. They had different alchemists in it.
They did. They did. I loved it that you talked about too. I feel like it's one of our favorite quotes, and you were the first to bring it up on the show. The sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right?
Yep.
And the interesting thing about the actual like traditional alchemist is that they did pull apart the different components. That was part of the process, to actually pull apart the different components of something, to then like push aside what wasn't, maybe what was the baser elements, what you didn't want, and then to recreate something different with these elements that were left. So in a way, it is baking.
Well, but let's put it to like pop culture, right? So we had the boy band formula of the early 2000s, yet only two really come to mind as the boy bands of that time, right? Regardless of everybody trying to like imitate. And even the NSYNC and Backstreet are who come to mind for me, for my generation. And like, when you really think about it, Boys to Men started it, and they were incredibly talented. And there's a lot of, socio-political reasons why they didn't quite take off. But when you think about like, they've tried that formula since, and it's only worked a couple of times here and there. And like, if you took any one of those boys out and replaced them with another boy, you wouldn't have the same band. Like, it's why they haven't been able to like bring NSYNC back without Justin. It's not the same.
Except then I do think about Menudo. So when that might have been
Menudo.
And the boys were only in the band until they hit a certain age, and then they were replaced with another boy. Because I'm sure
it probably was never like, they were probably
never
still
the same until
successful
as it was the first.
Yeah.
The first group of Menudo was the most successful.
And if that's how they started, if people knew that was coming, because I think there are some K-pop bands or stuff that do similar things.
Yes.
But it's still just not quite the same. There's just something about that mix of people, mix of talent, even if the songs sound identical, even if their voices hit the same notes. There's just that, like I said earlier, the je ne sais quoi.
Yes, je ne sais quoi. When in
Which
doubt.
in French means I don't know what, right? It's just that I don't know what of life.
That thing. It's the thing that is the magical piece that you cannot name. It's the X in the X in the who are the girls that were made in the laboratory. Powerpuff Girls.
Did I nail it? We're in sync today.
Yes, Powerpuff Girls. Yes, because they were like this thing and that thing, and then element X, and they weren't sure what that was, and that's what created them the way that they were.
So I wanted to make sure I was getting the words right, because as soon as I defined it, I was like, is my French correct? So je ne sais quoi is something such as an appealing quality that cannot be adequately described or expressed.
I love it.
Which
I feel like that is perfect.
And that's part of the impressive mystery, right? That the
Yes.
dictionary had for us.
Yeah, it is.
And so for us, I mean, you brought up some good cooking is a way of alchemy. I brought up boy bands and pop culture and things like that. But for what we talk about on the show, and what actually came to mind at the beginning of the episode was our episode Dimly, about what to do when you don't feel your brightest. And to me, this is just about like, I keep saying personality isn't permanent, right? Like, work on your character, think about who you want to be, manifest what you want. All of that is just like really big ways of saying transform your life, right? Like, pick something and just transform it. And what do they say?
We did an episode on transformation too.
Yes.
Yeah. Pick something and just transform it. Were you going to go on with that?
No.
Oh, okay. Because that is actually, it's sort of like the first thing you do. Like, if you're thinking about alchemy to turn it on yourself, and I wouldn't say to create something better. I would say to let the best parts of you shine through. And then to integrate those other parts that are maybe things that you don't like about yourself. I'm going to get back to that in a second, because anyways, I'll get back to that. So one of the first steps is just like recognizing, like, what is it? Can you recognize what you want to change, or you want changed? Or can you recognize at least the first glimmers of like what you would want to bring forward, right?
Well, so let's think about your fairy godmother, right? So your alchemist idol in that instant took something that already was and repurposed it. And so when you say integration, I think of like how popular shadow work is right now.
Yeah.
Or how popular, just like healing yourself is right now. Like, all of these little things are not one and done things. Like, you do them and then you take those lessons and you turn it into the new you integrate it moving forward. It's not just like a looking back and being like, okay, I healed that. That's done now. No, you carry the healed part with you just as much as you carried the shadowy part with you.
Yes. It is very much, I think, like the grief cycle, where it really isn't a linear line. You go forward and back, and you can go 2 steps back and 1 step forward. And so it's very much, you may have to integrate something a number of times, right? But the first step is always just like, what is this, right? And which, of course, it's going to be like reflection, like your daily reflection on different things. And then it is sort of like getting deep with yourself. So sort of like you're going into your subconscious mind, meditation. But that's where you're sort of breaking down your solid into a liquid, so that you're like, this is the way I am. This is how I've always been. This is how I do things.
You melt that.
Yeah. You get water poured on you. I'm melting. And then it's sort of like, once you get loose, you can sort of see things a little bit clearer.
What I like about that solid into a liquid analogy, metaphor, similar, I don't know. What I like about that is, typically in like our tower moments in life, or like when there is a lot of change going on around us, even if we're the ones initiating it, it's getting hot, right? It's getting uncomfortable. It's, and so if you're thinking about taking all that uncomfortableness or all that energy that comes with it and just be like, oh, I'm just melting. I'm turning into my liquid, so that I can then merge with this other liquid.
Yeah. And one of the things that it's just super interesting when you think about it, turning the process on yourself. It's like, when are you liquid? When are you in the flow? Like, what are different things that you do in your life where you sort of lose time? Or, for me, if I'm really in the writing moment, I can just write and write and write. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're up and you're like, what just happened? And so it's sort of like losing your self in the flow And that makes it easier to be that liquid thing, to sort of once again see the parts of you. Yeah. Do you ever get in a space where time just sort of goes away for you?
I have time blindness, Amy. That's every.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
No, I mean, I've definitely, because a lot of this kind of comes back to purpose too. I think that's a huge part of the book. The Alchemist is he's kind of finding his purpose.
Yes.
In life. And so for me, I've tried to think of, those moments or those hobbies or those things. But every time I've alchemized into a new version of myself, those things have changed. And so that's just kind of
cool,
part of the constant discovery of it. And so, yeah, in the past, writing has been one. Creating things in general is kind of where it's at, right? Or connecting with other people.
Yeah.
But I
feel like for you too, though, it would be because I feel like you do intentional hiking more than I do. I go for walks, but I don't think I hike. So I would imagine that maybe happens for you.
Oh yeah, wandering in the woods for sure. I mean, and that's the nice thing about the life that I live is if I can take these things and just let that happen, right? So when I decide I'm going to go hiking, I don't have anywhere I have to be typically for that whole weekend, but especially that day, right?
Yeah.
So if I am on a loop and I just want to extend it or do it again or find a different spot or do another trail, I can stay in those moments longer. And sometimes it's meditative, sometimes there's podcasts, right? Like, so it's a little, it's a little bit different, but I think that's a huge part of alchemy is allowing yourself the time to see if you'll get lost, to see if you'll get immersed. You can't say I have an hour to see if I get lost in it. The second you time bound it, it's not the magic goes away. And I realize that's unfair. There's a lot of people that don't have that ability and you can get lost in something in the limited time that you have. But I'm saying if you're trying to discover what that is, it's a lot harder to discover when you already have a window.
Good point. It would be a hard thing to discover if you have a limited amount of time, but I'm sure even for people who have limited amounts of time, they have found themselves just serendipitously lost in time.
Oh, yeah. I've read about this guy who draws for an hour every day. And initially he did it to just get better at his craft. And now that's his hour to draw and he looks forward to it. But then he also ends it at that hour. And I would imagine if he were to do what I do with my hobbies, you'd burn out on it, right? Because you'd get too much time in it. I think playing music is another similar thing that can happen for people where just out for a bit is kind of nice, but you'll take the hour if all you have is an hour. Yeah. If you already know what it is, I think a lot of people are probably screaming like, no, I'd take 40 minutes to get lost in XYZ. And I'm really excited for you that you know what that thing is. It takes me a little longer.
So then the next step, and I'm not going to go through all of them because I haven't gone through all of them unless we've got time.
Well, where are these steps from again? Did you say?
These steps are actually alchemy, an alchemist 7 steps. It's the actual 7 steps. And there's different names for them. Like the first one, when I talked about daily reflection or breaking down a substance, that's actually called calcination.
Oh, so you mean like alchemy as in the true science and like back when they used to make gunpowder and like not know that it was gunpowder or fire.
Yes. And then the other stuff where I got sort of the, where did I get that from? It was like from a WikiHow, was like sort of the cross reference of how to turn that alchemy, how to modernize it and turn it on yourself.
Well, so you said for these 7, for the scientific was calcination, dissolution, separation, conjunction, fermentation, distillation, and coagulation. Yes. And when I was skimming this earlier today, the fact that it was 7 caught my eye.
Yeah.
Then when I started
caught my eye too. Look at
some of these, it seems like you could equate them to the 7 chakras too. Or that, I don't know, there's just so many things that relate to 7 that it would be really try and make the parallels happen.
Yeah, I wanted to equate them to, first of all, I wanted to equate them to the different cups in the 7 of Cups.
Ooh, I hate that card.
I know you do. And then I wanted to equate them to the 7 dwarves. I was going to be like,
7 dwarves. Ooh, Cinderella and Snow White. All the princesses joined us today.
Actually, the princesses haven't. It's it's their sidekicks that
That's
we're
true.
interested in.
And I say that because earlier Amy was quoting the movie The Little Mermaid, not the actual mermaid to me. So it's it's a very themed convo this afternoon.
Yeah, it's a quote I use a lot. I say if I find myself saying, okay, so then this is what we're doing here, and that's what we're doing there, and blah blah blah, and it gets long and involved, I'm like, this is this and that is that, which of course is Flounder from The Little Mermaid, in case you didn't know. Now you do. So I feel like for me, I'm in the separation portion. So the third step, which is like, who are you at your core? This is where you're separating the components, ditching the baser, and then like asking yourself, what's your gold? Like, what part of this is your gold?
What's your gold? What's your
that
gold?
one I didn't get from WikiHow. That one was me.
What is your gold, Amy?
Well, I'm just in the process of that, but I think and see, I even write, this is where it's been tougher for me. But I think part of the gold for me is actually the ability to share the things that I've been through, and then to also share like how I got past them, if that makes sense. But I think more than that, my gold is sort of like a teaching, some kind of sharing or teaching, something like that. See, I told you I wasn't that far along in this process. Do you, like, for you, what would you say your gold is?
I have no idea.
Oh, geez.
What I like about, so the separating the components piece, I think has happened to you several times throughout our arc of conversation this year, where we've done like the being the business of you analysis and exercises.
Yeah.
And so I think the separation piece, if you haven't already identified what components of yourself to kind of separate, I feel like doing those different analyses that we've talked about, or analyses up until now this year, and seeing where you are able to kind of, I mean, some people call it shadow work, but where you're able to step outside of yourself and be like, oh, that's why I do that. And I don't want to respond that way anymore. Or, oh, that's where that came from. That's where that thought, that feeling, that belief, and then see what you can transform there and what comes of it.
Well, and I feel like you said, even with the show Perspective, I had a huge breakthrough with that one. Well, not quite.
That's what I was thinking of.
Show,
yeah.
But certainly afterwards, where I was like, oh, and during the show. So I feel like that was a huge impetus for the rest of this as well, is that now I don't have to be under that like sort of guilt or shame umbrella of not being where my made up story of expectation where I should have been. So for now, it's interesting too that you're like, you could step away from yourself and look at yourself, because one of the steps that is further along than I am, distillation, is actually looking at yourself through the eyes of someone else, but someone who really loves you and can see the greatness in you. So if you could do that for yourself, so that then you know, like, oh, I was going to throw that piece away and I need to keep that piece. Or, oh, this other piece that I thought was just like, as you know, a princess sidekick is actually the thing that should be up front.
For alchemy, I want to challenge that a little bit. Okay. And I would like to say, because by then, in the conjunction, you've started assembling the elements and combining them into the best parts, right? So you're having an idea of where you want to go by then, what you're hoping to make. And so I think for this distillation piece, look at yourself through the eyes as someone who's achieved that goal, as future you.
Ooh, I like that even better.
Because they're the one that's going to know if this is the right mix of ingredients or not.
Yeah. I think that is something that I hope you out there as the listener can start to do, because I feel like it is if you do it, it can make a big difference in how you view yourself. Yeah.
I'm also wondering too, because I am somebody who does kind of need, I don't do good starting with a blank page, right? And so even though arguably I know the most about myself, sometimes I've shared in the past, I will reach out to people for very specific feedback or general feedback. But then I'm a filter, not a sponge with it. Right. And so you're taking, you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. And so you either want a chef, not a Gordon Ramsay that yells at adults chef. You want the Gordon Ramsay that teaches children. Like that's the type of mentor. So I would say, you know, someone who loves you, but they're going to be a little bit biased. So maybe somebody who's already doing the thing that you've identified you want to be more like, or that you want to do.
Yeah. And so even if it's not your future self, it's where you want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 7 steps from now down the line. I love that.
Because I mean, people who love us are great, and our peers and the people we surround ourselves with always mean well. But with the alchemy, we're going for mystery, we're going for transformation, we're going for improvement, something new. So there's a quote out there, you know, in order to live your dream life, you have to destroy the life you're living now. And even if elements of the life you have now you like and you want to move forward, it's again that, you know, whole is greater than the sum of its parts piece, where that stuff can come with you, but the whole of where you're at now has to dissolve. You have to melt it down, or you got to throw it out.
And I think that can sound maybe not scary, but daunting for many people. But that's also why I kind of want, I mean, anybody would argue too, that in order to create, like, art is destruction as well, because art is destroying the blank canvas, right? Art is destroying this mound of clay and creating something else out of it. So destruction is actually needed before creation. I just would add that. And also,
I was gonna say the individual ingredients aren't all going to taste good when they're not mixed together. So you can't be looking at things individually where you're at now, right?
Yes. Okay, I feel like that is key, because as you're pulling these components out, they aren't going to be as powerful as when they are all together. But you can make them even more powerful how you remold them, how you reshape them. This is a big conversation, but I'm hoping that everybody can look at this and just be like, oh, I can see alchemy now in my everyday life. And so it doesn't have to be, it can still be cool and mysterious, but it can also be approachable.
Well, and I think what's daunting, but what I like about it, a lot of the stuff we talk about on the show is reflection.
Yeah.
And it's where we've been.
Reflection can be daunting for people.
or just the brainstorming and thinking about where we want to be. The alchemy part of it is we have to take all that and make something with it and take action. This is a very action-oriented step. It does require reflection and introspection and self-evaluation and maybe documentation of journaling or whatnot to you know,
I would
a lot of trial and error,
documentation, right? Like, yes.
Yeah, something you got to test your recipes. It's not going to come out perfect the first time. And so that's the piece of it that feels kind of daunting to me, or kind of where I'm like shying away from like making any statement, because I know I'm not ready to take action on anything yet, right? I'm still very much in the contemplative, maybe research phase of my journeys. I don't, but yeah, this is fun. What was it? Mysterious. What was that definition again?
Mysterious and for heaven's sakes.
A power or process that changes or transforms something in a mysterious or impressive way. Oh man, I don't know how I can both be mysterious and share my journey on a podcast, Amy.
You just don't share all of it, Tracy.
Pay no mind to the man behind the curtain. That's not Disney, but it works. The Wizard of Oz, he was an alchemist, or he was thought to be, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. I mean, I think I said gunpowder earlier, but I think what comes to mind for me, and where I think as a kid or young adult, I first kind of heard or realized, you know, kind of what an alchemist was in the movie Timeline, where these scientists, geologists, whatever, end up going back in time to the past and experiencing the Middle Ages, which is what they were digging up. They were digging up an old castle and they were digging up all these old graves and like learning about all these people, and they ended up going back in time and seeing it in real time. And when one of them was captured, he kind of bartered his way into not being killed by using the science of today to make them think he was a wizard back then. And he created like everlasting light or everlasting flame.
Was that based on a book by
maybe Gerard Butler was in it, and Paul Walker.
Michael Crichton.
Maybe. Yeah, it was called, so it was called Timeline. It was late 90s, early 2000s. But this guy, he, based on his basic scientific knowledge of, the 2000s, he was able to make this powder that seemed to burn infinitely. I buy it at Menards for $1 and throw it into my fireplace so that my flames are colored, or my bonfire. Right. And so I don't think of myself as an alchemist, but like, there's like, I don't know. It's just fun and mysterious and things like that. So back in the day, we thought of it as someone being a wizard. And now I feel it's more somebody being really intentional with their life.
Yes. I love that. I do.
Well, if this episode spoke to your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast, or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright, beautiful, mysterious, and impressive day.
Bye.
Bye.